also. That will rock your world. He's one of our faves, huh? Look at him. He's just being shy. Okay. Good morning. I'm Ann Sadowski-Sitzman, and it is my honor and pleasure to introduce our guest speaker today, Reverend Paul John Roach. We go by Reverend Paul, right? Oh, you go by Paul. Okay.
Call me Reverend Paul, okay?
Yeah, I'll call you whatever it is. Paul John Roach is a native of Wales in the UK, a graduate of Jesus College, Oxford University. He has a BA and MA degree in English and a postgraduate degree in education from the University of Wales. Paul was ordained at Unity Ministerial School in Kansas City in 1988. Paul served as the senior minister at Unity of Fort Worth from 1988 until he retired in 2018. Of course, old ministers never die, they just retire, and we keep bringing them back and we're glad you're here. Okay. He's also served the Unity movement on several boards and teams, including the board of Unity Worldwide Headquarters. Paul is the author of the award-winning book, Unity and Religions, which focuses on the perennial philosophy with all spiritual traditions. He's written many articles for Unity Magazine publications. His interests include, get ready, writing, poetry, ecological, social action, birding, bicycling, walking, hiking, gardening. I'm going to add talking. Okay. Paul believes joy and laughter and gratitude are essential qualities on the spiritual path. Please join us, Reverend Paul.
Thank you so much. That was a lovely introduction.
Oh, I'd much rather have a hug.
Yeah, of course.
Thank you.
Yeah, talking. You know, if you're a minister, once you start talking, you can never shut up, so you've got to be careful. It's great to be here again, and always a joy. And I tell you what, you cannot be anything less than joyous when you listen to that fabulous flute, yeah? That is awesome. Thank you so much. You know, the world seems nutty and crazy sometimes and overwhelming, yes. I'm not the only one, right? And we need that sense of all is well in the world. There is a core, a center of calm and possibility and just deep peace that exists no matter what else is going on. So for this next 20 minutes or so, I'm just going to talk about how to achieve that, how to move in the direction towards that deep peace rather than the direction of craziness. And we're going to use the parable by Jesus in Matthew 25. I'm sure you've read it or heard it sometime, and I'll read it again. But it's about the sheep, separating the sheep from the goats. Now, before I start, you know, in the parable, the sheep come off a little better than the goats, yeah? So I want to let you know that no goats were harmed in the making of this message. It is purely symbolic, folks, right? And I don't want you to take it literally because the Bible's a bit like that. It gets really down and dirty. All the people are going to be destroyed. But it's really not people, or in this case, goats. It's about the goat attitude in our consciousness. So let's remember that. It is not to be taken literally. The message is about discernment, right? Discerning the true from the false, you know, the fake from the real. And it's getting more and more difficult to do that, isn't it? Because we're bombarded by fake information. Now we've got, and I love AI. AI is a blessing in many ways, but it also creates a whole lot of made-up stuff. And you can't tell what's real and what isn't. And if we rely on out there to provide us with the deep information, the deep knowledge that we require to live successful lives, we're going to be waiting a long time, yes? If it's going to happen, it has to happen, as we know in Unity, in here, right? It's an inside job, and we have to get right in here. So that's the message today, is how to do that, how to separate the sheep from the goats. And it's taken, as I said, from Matthew 25. Should we get stuck in, shall we? That requires a yes, otherwise I do not go on. Okay, just checking. Don't be afraid. It's the Bible, but we don't have to be afraid of it. And it's the New Testament. That's where God got a little bit better, He was tough in the Old Testament, but he sort of warmed up, didn't he? Until he got to Revelation, and he went back again. Dang! Okay, this starts at 25:31. And I'll read a little bit at a time because I want to unpack it. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him. Now, let's look at that metaphysically. When the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him. What's this talking about? We may say traditionally, well, he's talking about the second coming of Jesus or the coming of God. But if we're talking metaphysically, what is it talking about? It's that moment when what? You are out there. The moment of awakening. It is that. When does that happen? When does that happen, folks? Anytime you want it to. Charles Fillmore said, you can know by holding the thought that you know. That's a powerful statement. Think about it. You can know by just holding the thought that you know. Why? Because you have all knowledge, all wisdom, all love, all possibility right here and right now within you. Yeah? And so to affirm that knowledge is then to create that awakening, right? And sometimes we say, oh, well, one day when my ship comes in, when everything's perfect, when I've got it all together, I'm new to this, I don't know about where I can be awakened, I'm going to put it off to later. Well, that's fatal. Why? Why put it off? If not now, when? And if not you, who? Right? It's here and it's now for us to claim. So, let's read it again. When the Son of Man, who is the Son of Man? Who's the daughter of man? We are. When we come into our glory and all the angels with us, because folks, when we recognize the truth of our being, we are never alone, are we? We have the whole company of the angelic realm, which means all the good thoughts, all the good ideas, all the divine qualities come with us, yeah? And they're guiding us and they're lifting us up. And all the people that we have loved and love are with us too in that awakening. Because what I've found is when I discover my Christ, when I discover that truth of my being, it is not just for me, right? It is for all beings, for everybody. So everybody is welcome. It's the company of all the people that support me and I support them. We are together in that awakening. It's a glorious moment, isn't it? Yeah. It's a glorious moment. It's a glorious moment like that poem which you just read, which was the idea, there might have been tough stuff that went on, but I choose to see the good here because no matter what went on, it was a blessing for me. It taught me something. It brought me into this moment of love and connectedness, awakening moment, right? So the Son of Man comes in his glory and all the angels with him. There's almost moments of waking up. He will sit on his glorious throne with all the nations gathered before him. Okay, we're going to sit on our throne because we're centered and poised in the Christ Spirit. Who are these nations? What are the nations? All our thoughts, right? All our feelings, all our attitudes, all the thought people. Some people call it the committee. Yeah? All the aspects of what's going on in our consciousness gather to take guidance. That's our key word today, isn't it? Take guidance from the Christ, right? All the stuff comes together. And we are able then in that moment of awakening to discern the true from the false, right? The kind from the unkind. The expansive from the mean, yeah? The sheep from the goats, basically. That's the imagery here we're talking about. So when we come into our awakened awareness, we get to look clearly at who we are, without judgment, by the way. We just get to see it. And we see, oh, wait a minute, maybe that wasn't the most kind and loving thought I've had. So maybe I need to not do that anymore, right? Because if you hold thoughts, what happens next? They turn into actions, don't they? And then we got a mess on our hands. So we don't want to give credence to limited negative thoughts, goats. We need to shift our focus back towards the sheep, the innocent, open consciousness, the pure consciousness of spirit within us. So we can align ourselves from the Christ through our thought people out into the world. So far, so good, right? So let's go on. He says, I'll place the sheep in the nation's share. I will separate the sheep from the goats, and I will place the sheep on the right hand and the goats on the left. Then the king will say to those on his right, now imagine this is being spoken to you right now from the Christ of your being. You have my Father's blessing. Come, take possession of the kingdom that has been made ready for you since the world was made. For when I was hungry, you gave me food. When I was thirsty, you gave me drink. When I was a stranger, you took me into your home. When naked, you clothed me. And when I was ill, you came to my help. When in prison, you visited me. Then the righteous will say, the thoughts attuned to spirit will say, Lord, when was it that we saw you hungry or fed you, or thirsty and gave you drink? A stranger and took you home, or naked and clothed you? When did we see you ill or in prison or come to visit you? And the king will answer, the wise, intuitive part of us will answer, truly I tell you, anything you did for one of my brothers here, however insignificant, you did for me. What's it saying? Those are beautiful words, aren't they? Sometimes we think we have to change the world in order to be worthy. But what is the Christ saying here? What's Jesus saying? What you did for the least, right? The little tiny thing you did is also an expression of love in action, yeah? So don't think it always has to be the big stuff. Sometimes we don't do the little stuff because we're waiting for the big stuff. I want big in my life. But we neglect the little tiny things, the little kindnesses. What have you done today? So let's put you on the spot. Can I put you on the spot? Very silent. No response. What have you done today? Just throw it out that you think is a small act that you did for the least of these.
Social media post.
Social media post, okay. There we go, excellent. Smiled. Said hello to somebody. A hug. An appreciation of a poem or a beautiful piece of flute music, yeah? All these are those little things. You did it for the Christ because you did it with love, with appreciation, right? You're magnifying the good, yeah? But if you said life sucks, yeah, okay, so this old blind guy did something, who cares? You know, what are you doing then? You're maximizing your goat, aren't you? And it's not the goat that means greatest of all time. This is different kind of goat. These are not good goats. But if you did something as simple as that, as all these things that we mentioned, and they're wonderful, then you will be blessed. Then you will be blessed because you've remembered who you are in truth. And then he goes on and said the same thing basically to the goats. When you didn't do it. You didn't do all those kind things. And so you are condemned. Now, let's get beyond the condemned, because no real person is condemned, right? It is simply that the thoughts and feelings that do not serve us, where do they need to go? Bye-bye. In file 13, they need to just go, right? And when the Bible said they will be utterly destroyed, what it means is they have no substance in and of themselves. Mean-spirited consciousness does not come from the Christ. It comes from the misuse of the Christ as a parasite, right? Whenever you're mean, it's not the truth of you. You're not mean. It's you've allowed that negative aspect of you to come to the fore, right? And we have to say no to it, and we have to be firm about that, yeah? We have to say, no, that is not who I am. I am not a goat. I am a beautiful child of God. I inherit the kingdom. Amen? So, there's lots of keys here. What's the first thing to do then in order to assure that we're in the flow and are going to have a blessed and expansive life? First thing. We've got to get the first one right. Everything else falls from that. It's a kind of surrender, but to what? We have to remember who we are. We are the Christ, right? We are the all possibility. We are love. We are infinite. And that's where we need to return home to as much as we can, as many times a day as we can, in every single way that we can, right? To come back to that truth. And if I recognize it in me, I don't just say, well, look at me. I'm the Christ, I'm so cool. Lost it, right? Because the ego then has taken over, right? And says, look how wonderful you are. No, when you truly are awakened to the Christ in you, you can't wait to give it away to others, right? You behold the Christ in everybody else. See, this is the way it works, right? And you can test it for yourself. If you think you're hot stuff, you ain't. I remind myself of that or rather, my wife reminds me of that every single day. No, I remind myself too, because it's so easy for our humanness to take charge, isn't it? And circumvent the truth of our being. So center in the Christ. And it is a form of surrender, isn't it? A surrendering of my humanness, the thing that I think is so important, my ego, surrendering that to this greater force of truth within me. That's number one. What's number two then? Okay, we're centered in that. What am I doing? I'm doing something about it, because we got a bad habit in Unity of holding all these wonderful affirmations, right? I'm so wonderful, I'm the Christ, I'm in the flow of God's good. And then what do we do with it? Nothing, often. We're just walking around with it. Well, we got to put it into practice somewhere, right? That's what we said earlier. What did you do today so far, right? So we have to think constantly of ways by which the Christ can express through me. And I'm going to ask you that question at the end of the sermon, is one thing that you're going to do this week. So be thinking about that. What one thing you're going to do that's going to be that? Because Jesus said, there's only one way to know somebody where they are in consciousness. You shall know them by their fruits. You shall know them by their fruits. In other words, somebody can talk a good talk, right, till the cows come home, and it takes you a long time to realize that person was not genuine. Have you ever had this happen to you? Or maybe even yourself. You thought you were so righteous, and then you realized, maybe I wasn't so righteous. Maybe I had it angled for my own self-satisfaction. Yeah? So the fruit, the good fruit, is always coming from the Christ presence, yeah? And that's how we can judge ourselves. How am I showing up? What is my fruit? Because if I'm producing bad fruit, smelly goats, then that's not so good. And then finally, it's not always easy to be perfect, is it? Never. So the work then is to constantly redirect our thoughts from the goats to the sheep, from the sullied negative thoughts. And folks, it's so easy to get negative right now, isn't it? There's so much craziness going on. I can be righteous. My righteousness could say, oh, they're terrible what they're doing and all that. But I'm doing to myself a disservice. I've got to stop that and remember, I'm not in the business of changing them. I'm in the business of changing me. So I can be centered and poised and be a force for good rather than a force for crazy goats running around everywhere in my head. I don't know if anybody ever read the book M. Scott Peck's Road Less Traveled. Remember that one from way back when? Well, he wrote another one called The Different Drum. And he starts it like this. There was this monastery that had been very successful and welcomed people from all over the world, and they had a great thing going. And then something happened. They got too self-assured or whatever, or complacent, but less and less people started to come. The monks in the monastery were sort of infighting and bitching and moaning, basically, and everything went downhill. And the monastery was in a terrible state because they didn't have enough money to look after it, and et cetera, et cetera. And they thought, we got to do something. And they tried all kinds of things in the outer, but then one of the monks said, well, we better pray. You know, have you ever noticed that when everything else has run out, we better pray? Hopefully we don't do that here, right? We pray up front. So they had this idea, well, okay, we'll pray and see if some guidance comes. Well, they prayed all night, and in the morning, one of the monks said, well, most of the monks had nothing, really. They were still not getting in the flow. But one of the monks said, I got a message in my prayer that said, one of us is the Christ. One of us is the Christ. So they all looked at each other and thought, wow, one of our circle, one of our group of monks is the Christ. And then they began to muse on that each day. And because they thought, well, maybe one of you is the Christ, I better treat you nice. And since, because they didn't know which one it was, they started to treat everybody right? And as a result, things began to change. There was less bitching and moaning. There was more cooperation. There was more upliftment of the good. There was more sheep and less goats. And what happened was a miracle, because then suddenly people would start to come to the monastery again. The energy had changed. I think this works in a church. It works in a home. It works in a nation. It works everywhere, this message, right? Because what happened? They didn't change the outer. They changed their attitude in the inner, yeah? They began to behold the Christ in each other. And because of that, the Christ was present, right? More and more energy was spent on upliftment rather than on tearing things down or worrying about why it didn't work out. Fast from that, feast on the centeredness of the Christ within you, yeah? Great story, isn't it? I love it. Another great one for me that I use often is the Rotary Club, the four-way test. Come across it before? Four-way test of the Rotary Club of the things that we think, say, and do, right? Number one, is it the truth? Now, sometimes my mouth goes before I've checked. How about you? But then I check, is that the truth? Well, I don't really know. So shut up. Is it the truth? Is it fair for all concerned? That's a big one. It may be fair for some, but not for all. And if it's not fair for all, again, don't do it. Number three, will it build goodwill and better friendships? Oh, sure, when I bitch and moan and whine at people, it's going to build great friendships. Yeah, I love it. It only builds the friendships that are a bunch of goats, right? Moaning in the corner. We don't want to be like that. And then number four, will it be beneficial for all concerned? We're talking about expansiveness, aren't we? What's the sheep are good at in the symbolism is expansiveness, is seeing things in a larger, all-embracing way rather than in a defended way. Yeah? We're building bridges rather than walls. Years and years ago, when my late wife and I were starting on the spiritual path, we had a wonderful old, he was in his 90s, I think, an old wise man come and stay with us. His name was Robbie. And we ran Unity of Wales at that time. And so we had him speak. And at the night before, my late wife had this amazing dream where she saw the angels falling from heaven, and they were praising her and uplifting her, and she felt so wonderful, and this, that, and the other, and a real epiphany. And he listened to this because she shared it with him in the morning, And he said, "This is wonderful, my dear, wonderful, but I hope it is for the benefit of all concerned." And it deflated her right like that. Why that's important is sometimes we have these wonderful ideas that we think are so great, but are they, right? Are they for the benefit of all concerned? Or are they just really a form of aggrandizing myself? And albeit to her, she recognized it and she thought, oh, I'm getting a bit grandiose here. I'm kind of puffing myself up. And so she learned that lesson really quickly, and it was beautiful, because the rest of her life, much of her life, was dedicated to helping and serving others in so many ways. When we ask, is it for the benefit of all concerned, there's usually a lot of crickets going on, isn't there? Because really, is it? How do we know? How do we know it's for the benefit of all concerned? What are some of the hallmarks of that? See what I mean? It's hard, isn't it? What are the hallmarks of, is it for all, best for all concerned? Say again? Look at the proof. Look at the results. Look at the fruits. Is it blessing everyone? Is there an agenda in it or not? Right? Do we ever fully know if it's for the benefit of all concerned? No. But if we're coming from love, coming from this Christ, coming from that awakened consciousness, whatever it is that we determine and decide from that, and it's moment by moment guidance here. It's not one time and then I turn off the Christ and go back to my life. No, you're continually in connection to that truth. When you do that, then whatever unfolds next is going to be for the benefit of all concerned, right? But you fine-tune it every moment along the path. Yeah, got it? Yep. Makes sense? So, pop quiz time, folks. We've got 4 ways, and I sort of gave you a little bit of it earlier, so it shouldn't be that hard. 4 ways to separate the sheep from the old goats. Number 1, we know this, we've talked about it. You listened, you forgot. No, you didn't forget. What's the first thing? And the only thing, really, get this right and everything else is a piece of cake. Center yourself in the Christ. Remember who you are. Whichever phrase you want to use, right? Center yourself in that one presence, one power. Remember the Christ that you are, that Buddha nature within you, right? Surrender to that. That's number 1. Once you center yourself in that consciousness, then everything flows because you have harnessed the energy of the universe. And that's a big thing. The whole energy of the universe is at your disposal at that moment. Right? That's number 1. Number 2. Before the action, from that consciousness of the Christ, discern your thoughts and your words and how you want to act. Discern them wisely. That's where you separate the sheep from the goats, right? A good idea from a bad idea. When I was first on social media, I would just write stuff and then click gone. And then I realized, ooh, that wasn't very nice. And sometimes I get really nasty responses, you know. And I said, how dare you? But I deserved it. So now when I do something like that, well, number 1, I don't do it late at night. I don't do it if I've had a pint of beer. I try not to do it. I definitely don't do it if I'm feeling less than in the flow, right? And then I'll check it again before I send it, because I don't want to put out into the universe stuff that's going to tear things down. I want everything to go out that's going to build things up. So discern. First one is center in the Christ then. Second is discern. I'm doing all the work here. I'm the minister. I'm not supposed to do all. Oh, wait a minute. What's number 3? Now we're getting to the one somebody mentioned earlier. do something about it, right? There's a guy named Randy Fikes. He's a minister down in, I think, Kansas City, or did he move to New Orleans? Anyway, he's just been given the light of God, expressing a award at Unity. He's a relatively young man. He's very dynamic. Anyway, he wrote down all the things he's been up to in the last 2 weeks in his ministry and in all the social action that he's involved with. And it blew my mind. How does he keep up with all this? But it was inspiring to me because he's really living that truth. He's coming from the center and discerning what's right for him to do, and then he goes and steps out and does it. And as a result, he's getting many blessings, right? So that's what we're talking about. Find something that you can do that is going to enhance the good in our world, in Dallas, right now, in June. So that's 3. There's a 4th one. Make sure it's good for everyone. But my one is, if you're straying from the sheepfold, back into the goat pasture, redirect, right? Redirect yourself. Grumpy goat? No. Happy sheep? Yes. So finally, here's the question. What one and I want to hear it from everybody, so that might take a while, but that's okay. Just kidding. Finally, what one generous thing are you going to do this week? What one generous thing? And again, there'll be many. And if you don't feel like saying it right now, I understand that, because these things are sensitive and tender to each of us. But if there's something burning on you that you think, this is something I can do this week, what might it be? One generous thing, one expansive thing to enhance the good in my world this week. What might it be? Yeah, go ahead.
I will make sure my husband gets a nap.
Bless you. But don't let him sleep too long, okay? Does that mean you normally kind of bug him about, chores that he has to do and won't let him have a nap? Cruel, cruel woman. Good. Let him rest. And let yourself rest. That's a generous thing you can give yourself. I'm going to take some moments just to do nothing. I love to do nothing. It's very creative. Because what you're doing is letting go of all the things you think are so important and allowing the emptiness, which is where the Christ is, right? That full emptiness to be present for you. Often I'll come out with a wonderful idea after doing nothing, apparently doing nothing for a while. So be good to yourself. What else? Say again? Thank people, yeah. Make it a habit to thank people. I like to do that. I like to have a conversation in different situations if the person's open to it. And often it can be quite an interesting conversation. And it doesn't have to be about a profound topic, but just you've made connection with somebody, right? And that thankful attitude encourages that. Yeah, excellent. Just a few more. Tell my wife she's hot. Now, I'm not going to judge that in any way. I think that's a wonderful thing to do. And then next week you're going to say, hey, babe, how come you never tell me I'm hot? But sure, compliment. When you're in a relationship for a while, it can be taken for granted, can't it? And every moment it's important. And we can let things slip by if we don't tell your spouse he or she is hot. Maybe that's the word for today, Tell somebody they're hot. One more, and then we'll stop. Listen. Oh, wonderful. In all this talk that we've been doing, it's wonderful to listen, because if we're present to ourselves, but also another person, without trying to fill the gap with an answer, then we hear all kinds of wonderful things, right? I listen to nature, Mother Nature, and it speaks to me in wise words, guides me. Because nature does things perfectly. There's a balance, there's a harmony. And if I can trust that balance and harmony, then I'm filled with wisdom as a result. Okay, it's been very quiet in here today. I don't know if, are we okay? Did everything work out well? Yeah, makes sense. Thank you. We're taking in all the wonderful information from the Christ. Let's do a short meditation. We complicate a lot of things. There's many books written about these subjects, whole systems laid out by religions. Even Unity has numerous books. All these are wonderful. But ultimately, it is very, very simple. It's simply being who we are. We are created as a miracle because we are created by a miracle. It's impossible to imagine the intricacy of our bodies and our consciousness. And just simply to remember that, to know that, is transformative. Just to be present to who we are. Even the ways that we go astray are lessons to bring us home. Home to that natural radiance that is the truth of our being. And then to do something remarkable, to see that natural radiance in everyone else. To celebrate that we are all in this together. And so we choose to do that this moment and this week. To listen, to be open, to be calm and receptive, to be guided by Spirit. I can know by simply holding the thought that I know. And the wisdom of the Christ, the wisdom of God, the love and peace and power of God and the Christ, then cascade into my consciousness and bring forth creative ideas by which I can fashion my life. And so from source to manifestation, I am in the flow of all good. And for that, I say, thank you. Thank you, Creative Spirit. Thank you, Mother, Father, God. Thank you, Divine Presence, Sweet Spirit, Presence of Love. And so it is. Amen.